So excited to be here tonight. For those of you that I have not met before, my name is Chris Foltz, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Human Intelligence Movement. Oftentimes people ask me, you know, um, how do I get involved with this? What is it, etc. Please visit humanintelligencemovement.org's website. You have to join under. There's no charge to join, but ultimately this brings more opportunities for things like what we are doing tonight in our Evolving Mind series. Now, the vast majority of people watch this after the fact on one of our membership portals, or I guess some people probably tune in on YouTube, but we get to be with Meghan here in person. So I was really excited. I jumped on the opportunity when I knew Meghan was doing an Evolving Minds to say, listen, I want to be the one that gets to interact with her. Um, and the easiest way I can describe it is this: Meghan has become one of my favorite people on the planet. I think we met sometimes toward the end of last year. And the irony of this is we found out we went to the same preschool, right? And I'm telling you, this is a Midwest town that nobody knows about, a preschool nobody's heard about. And Meghan and I both went to this school. So right away I knew that, well, right away I immediately judged her. But at the end of the day, what I realized is that, listen, this is a kindred spirit. Then I actually got to spend time with Meghan and learn what it's all about. Now, in a human intelligence movement, we have a lot of amazing educators, leaders, business leaders, and everything. But it's rare to find somebody that has been involved in the education landscape from so many different positions. And what I mean by that, I mean, it's oftentimes you see people kind of rise up in academic positions in schools. But imagine somewhere along the way, after having a very fruitful career as a first grade teacher, to decide to kind of go over to, as she described to me, the dark side, and actually figure out how things are done inside of the charter school world, and ultimately be able to play more of a role in shaping the future of society, with somewhat custom restrictions as developed in charter schools. So Meghan Freeman, again, one of my favorite people. And what I can say is the most important here is, some of the work that I'm doing. I see Dr. Angela Myers has joined us tonight. A lot of the work that we're doing in our research committee at the Human Intelligence Movement is based around critical thinking and the role that it plays in modern society. And ultimately, we can throw around these fancy terms like critical thinking, these composite skills, if you will. But in every framework, these skills are meant for something. And things like critical thinking are meant to help people solve problems. And ultimately, I spent a lot of time talking to Meghan about the underlining things that go into the human brain when it comes down to learning how to learn, what to do with this information, and how you can actually have the fruitful, flourishing life that you've always wanted, starting all the way down at the pre-K level and going until you're 90 some years old. I'm letting anyone over 90 off. They don't have to learn anymore. They're good to go. So I would like to warmly welcome Meghan Freeman from, I guess you're from several different places. I think we're talking about Elite tonight. Hopefully you can
Yeah,
touch just a bit on your startup and how you're taking Elite and turning it into something to scale. But I'd love to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us in Evolving Minds. Meghan, why don't you tell everyone, just, I know you got some fans in the room, but why don't you tell everyone a bit about who you are and why you're here?
absolutely. I am so honored to be here and actually honored to be a Human Intelligence Movement member. Really got attracted to the movement. Chris, thank you so much. I'm going to just keep you with me wherever I go. You always need a boost of energy. You bring Chris into the room, and I'm so thankful for the kind introduction and honored to be a part of this and really be someone who doesn't just talk the talk, but really has walked the walk and believes in the mission and vision of what we're doing. And I can dive in, Chris. I'm going to make this casual. I want this to be Socratic. We're a small group. I didn't know what to expect, was going to make it interactive, but I may just be Socratic with this group because it's fun. And I know a good chunk of you on this call. Dr. Myers, I'm so honored to see you here. Thank you for joining us. And Mark, so excited to meet you. I'm going to share my screen. I do have to send a request. Sorry. I do have to, I do have a formal presentation. So
You go about it however you want, but
Yep.
different than a lot of Evolving Minds, I think what we want to do is be somewhat interactive here,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
as we go through this, anybody in the audience, if they have something they want to add to, a question they want to ask, Mark, and anyone, please speak up. I know I've got a lot of things I'm going to ask through this process because it's so fascinating to me.
Good. Well, I am so excited to answer. Yep. Interrupt. Please be a part of this conversation. I can talk a lot. I'm really good at talking, but I definitely want to hear your voice. And someone who's been in the system for 25 years, as Chris said, I've served in multiple roles, and I have been a teacher. I have been an administrator. I am a parent. I am a parent who chose an alternative setting for my child. So someone who understands what it means to choose something different. I was a district administrator like you, Mark, who saw the ins and outs of district administration. Laura is on the call and is my partner in crime during Elite. So honored to have you here, Laura. And it's interesting. I saw the good, the bad, and the wonderful in the public school movement. And as someone who's seen that, and we're seeing the headlines now where we have 400,000 teacher vacancies available. We're seeing proficiency rates plummet despite, I think, over $30 billion in ed tech spent trying to work with proficiency. We're seeing students, quietly quit school, disengaging. You're seeing even your brightest students come to school with anxiety and depression after COVID. Influence on tech and influence on screens as changing culture. There's a lot of conversations, and someone who's sat in every role and really understand what it means to be a teacher, really understands what it means to be a principal, what it means to be a district level administrator, what it means to run a school, and as a parent, what it means to have my voice, and as a student who just got through school to get through school. I was wondering, what is the common thread? Why is this happening? And I remember in my kitchen, I was chopping up dinner, and I always have a glass of wine. So I was having a glass of wine, and I remember it hit me. And I don't know why that moment and why cooking somehow gives me solace and allows for me to think. I don't know if you guys have magic things that you do to bring you
Because
clarity.
you're Italian, Megan, I believe.
It's
That
true.
brings that.
So cooking brings me clarity. And in that moment, I'll never forget. It really hit me like a ton of bricks that people were leaving our profession because they didn't feel seen. And superintendents have 2 to 4 year tenures because maybe they're not being seen or heard by the community or for the complexities of their job. Principals, not moving up the ranks or staying where they're at because they're maybe moving to a different school, not being seen. Teachers leaving the profession because their voices are not being heard and the complexities of their job and the world that we're living in aren't being answered. And that's not because there's not wonderful things happening in school. There are. And for school, maybe some of the safest places for some students. I've seen that firsthand as well. But it's dynamic and it's complex. And in this world of AI, sitting there thinking about, gosh, if a system, this structure that is designed to develop and create and mold humans into their future, right? This system has people all across. Parents are leaving for alternative settings or homeschooling more than ever. I think we're up 30% year over year since COVID. Well, is this problem going to get worse as we have a tool or a system that's automating output and making things easier for us? Or what I'm hopeful for, and I believe in humans to my core, is this an opportunity for us to stop and pause and change? And that is something that I truly feel is very, very important in this world. And we're all wrestling with some questions right now, and this is the biggest one. And I think we're wrestling it. I don't care if you're an educator or you're in the business world. This is a question that we're trying to figure out right now. What does it mean to be uniquely human? And I'd love to hear from you. In your current role, what is the one skill that you have that allows you to be uniquely human? It's the most human part of your job. What is it?
Are you asking us
I
this?
am. I'm asking. Let's go. I would have done a poll. I would have done chat. There's just not too many of us. So
Yeah.
I'd rather talk.
Megan, for me, it's just connecting with people. Like I find so much value in human conversation, and so often that human conversation is not engaged. It's kind of left on the table. And I liked how you introduced this with the focus on amplifying stakeholder voices, because in every stakeholder group, so many voices have just gone unheard. So for me, it's just connecting with as many stakeholders as I can, whether it's a custodian or a superintendent. I feel like every conversation is very valuable and can yield, important insights and positive ways forward.
Absolutely. So you're talking about communication and connection
Yes.
being
I would say for me,
your
that's
superpower human skill. Sorry, Chris.
well, but
Yeah.
he's good
Thank
at
you.
it too, though, right? So, I mean, he's championed this skill, Marquez. I would say for me, it's resilience, right? Because, so many people ask me, like, Chris, what are like these defining moments in your life? And I often tell people, that I learned more from reacting to my failures than I've ever learned from celebrating my victories. And, I think that is what's made me resilient. And I promise you, I'd probably be dead. For any of you that know my background, I'd probably be dead right now if it wasn't for focusing on resilience. And I think oftentimes people throw around these words and don't realize what's adjacent to them, right? So, in order to be resilient, you need to be adaptable, you need to have perseverance, you need to have grit, right? So for me, it's that kind of package. But if I'm going to give it one word, it's going to be resilience.
Resilient. I love it.
So, Megan, I am actually taking a break from preparing dinner right now. Um, so that's why my screen has been off. But I wanted to say I think the number one thing for me is the relationship building. And I've this is only my fifth or sixth year in K-12 ed. Before that, I was an adjunct professor at a couple universities, and I was a pastor. And it was those community care skills and those building relationships and for the holistic person that have really that transferred into this current career I'm in, and that makes all the difference for me.
Love that. Building community, relationships, communication.
And I like how you use the word holistic. That's again so
Yeah,
often
and
it's looking at the whole person.
So well rounded. Lucy, what you got? I saw someone was starting to talk.
Yeah, I love what you all had to say. And I would say for me, I would add to that just the empathy, really coming in and meeting people where they are, because you're right with the resilience and the connection and all of everything that you all have said so far, but really caring and connecting with the people that you're in the room with.
So
Megan, I've never heard what Lucy just said there before. The idea of empathy is about meeting people where they are. That's so powerful. Like, so many people talk about empathy as this kind of word, this buzzword, but I never thought about it in an operationalization standpoint, the way that Lucy just drew attention to. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing.
I have been lucky to work with Lucy for many years, and that is one of her superpowers. And being able to be someone who sits in the space and works with teachers on a consistent level, her ability to be able to be empathetic at a level of a practitioner, right? Where it's not hypothetical, it's not theoretical, it's actually practiced on a daily basis. So thank you, Lucy. Anyone
I'm
else?
interested in what Dr. Myers has here, whoever's next on the list.
Hi, everybody. This relates very much to the work I did. I have a doctoral degree in education, specifically in human and organizational learning from George Washington University. And I wrote my doctoral dissertation on polymathy because I saw this narrative growing up where, like, we were all told, be specialist, be narrow, be expert, like be deep in one thing. In other words, put on blinders and don't look at the whole world and just memorize what we tell you and go to work and then retire and die quickly and just be robotic and memorize and don't use your full faculties. And I absorbed that narrative growing up, and I thought, that's bullshit. The quality of our minds is the quality of our lives. We should be able to decide what we learn about more. Education should free our minds, not make us conform. So everybody should be polymathic. Like, we should all be learning broadly and deeply and being creative and unique and expressing our onlyness and not being copies, Education should free our minds. And AI can help customize learning. There's all different kinds of ways to learn. I worked in adult education, by the way, for like a long time, and I still do. I have my own little business. And so I think a lot about these topics, about like, how can we design a world where human minds can thrive, where we can really explore the full human experience and become our full selves.
Well, I can't wait to read your work. I feel like you perfectly segued into my next point. And thinking about everything you said, it's funny, nobody said the LCAP or compliance or spreadsheets and things that our AIs can do so quickly. And what you highlighted and focused were uniquely human skills. And you can put them in buckets, as many have done. You can talk about 21st century skills, but skills that businesses are saying, hey, educators, I don't care if you're post-secondary, you're a K-12 high school, when your students graduate from your institution, they must be proficient in 21st century skills of communication, critical thinking, collaboration. And then you guys added empathy and so many wonderful skills. And all of these skills, I would like to ask you, where are they measured? And it's interesting. They become often supplemental in our world. And I'm so excited to share my journey. So you can see a little bit of how I took it from this theoretical standpoint and really began to implement. And many people on this call were right alongside with me on this journey. So I'm honored. And I really am challenging the theory that tonight, this evening, our value isn't about producing answers. It's deciding what you said, Dr. Myers, so specifically well. What happens? How do we free our mind to make sure that the human value is what we discern, how we think, the ability to make decisions and make the best decisions in the moment that we have. And I truly feel it's so funny when output is visible. And reasoning is not. This is a challenge that we're facing right now in education, right? We're seeing everything's based on proficiency. And oftentimes, we're hearing a lot about quiet quitters in the business world too. So this is not something that is just for education. I know a lot of us on this call are educators, but in the business world, we're seeing the same thing. When you rely on this output and you rely on these hard metrics, but you're not relying on the human reasoning, oftentimes the human judgment will be diminished in the process. And that's what we're seeing significantly across the board. And to make this really clear, I'm going to go back to my 25 years in my school. So when I was a teacher, I was really lucky. I worked at a school that served a high EL population, and I was really honored to be designated Teacher of the Year for the reclassification of so many EL students as a part of my work. So
what
I had a lot
EL,
of
Megan? Just
English
so
language learners. Thank you for
Okay.
clarifying. So yes, the acronym soup of education. Thank you, Chris.
So does this mean that the English is not their first language in this situation? Okay.
Right. So I just remember closing achievement gaps and serving in leadership roles and training teachers and literacy. I was an elementary school first grade teacher for most of my tenure, as Chris had said. So I spent a lot of my time with the younger children. And I received an award for the metrics for the closing of gaps. I received Teacher of the Year. As a principal, in a comprehensive setting, we again closed achievement gaps. And I remember the board meeting where I got my plaque. They were so proud of the work that we were doing. As a district level employee, we had a really tough audit year. And I remember getting accolades at a board meeting for getting a zero audit exception. So I was really, really proud of that because that was something that was important, of course, for the district and for transparency purposes, things we all go for. But the challenge I had in not one of those situations, not one, was I up there talking about how I did it. It was only about the measurement of the outcome. I got the award.
So it did not matter, Megan, at all. Like nobody cared how you did it, right? They were just looking at these statistics.
And so it wasn't because they were not, it was awesome to get the award, but you would think that in that moment, the system would produce an opportunity where you could go, and some of them do. So what I want to say is some of systems do have that opportunity for those people who win the awards to go train other people on how they do it. And I think the best leaders, that's in part of who they are. But it's interesting to be a part of a structure that really does reward you for, when you hit those measurement goals, they do reward you. And even more, I'm going to take it a step further. None of them asked me if I protected the human's judgment or the ability to think in that moment. Not one. So I received a lot of accolades in my career based on metrics that are important. But how I got there, the journey to getting there, to me, was just as important as the actual award. And so this is something that I constantly wrestle with. And I was going to do a work goal to do Socratically. So I wanted to put people in a dilemma of a leader, because if you haven't been in a leadership role, it's really hard to feel this. So pretending that you are a leader and that in this world you have implemented AI in the last year and you have seen efficiency improve in your organization 40%. You have more outcomes. You have more students doing better on their tests than you've ever have before. But what you're realizing at the same time is that your connection with your staff or your students is weakening. And they're leaving in droves. Your employees are not staying. They're not happy. And you do need employees. And even if you're lean and mean, There's a part of your job that is so uniquely human. You do need humans to make the engine run, and you cannot keep them. And as a leader, all you can do is intervene in one area. And Chris, I do have a poll, but I can say it out loud since we're small.
I got it right here. I'm going to send it.
Are you going to put it up? Okay, cool. You guys can go ahead and okay, if you are this leader, you're running this business, you have this AI, you only can intervene in one area. What do you do?
And for the interest of transparency, Meghan spelled the word oversight wrong when she sent me over the poll.
Thank you.
So in traditional Chris Foltz fashion, I wanted to bust her out on that.
Thank you.
I got you.
Ask Laura. Laura, are you still on this call?
She's somewhere here.
I wasn't going to say anything about
Laura,
it.
Are you surprised at all by that? One of my weaknesses, Laura used to probably tally how many things I got wrong. On my board as a first grade teacher, students would get points for checking my spelling. So I would say, hi, yes, my name is Meghan Freeman, and my brain works faster than it needs to at times, and my spelling is atrocious. So I definitely have certain people in my life.
I don't think this is a weakness. I think this is an endearing characteristic of the
definitely
Meghan Freeman.
Human. Definitely
That's
the
your
human
Rockford side coming out.
That
Meghan.
is Rockford. 100%.
It is. We got you on that.
Yes.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, there's a poll in there. I only see one result thus far, but there are 8 of you in here. So if all of you would just take a look at the poll that is wherever it exists. I don't know. I'm an administrator, so I just see it here.
I think it didn't need to answer. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was closed.
Well, that's shocking. Let me try to reopen it. So I know that we have one answer. Relaunch poll. Continue. Is it back? I'm just going to assume it might be back. Look at that. Now we got 2 in there. 3. Look at now people are coming in. Thank you, Lucy, for calling us out on the technology failure. You know, your whole tribe of people, Meghan, they're top tier, right? Let me just tell you. Yeah.
They really are.
All right, so Meghan, I'm not sure if you see the results on this, but I can share the poll.
I can't see the results on it at this point. So you want to share them? You just share them with the group.
I'm actually quite surprised, right? So I'm going to end the poll.
Okay.
And I'm going to share the results. 100% of the people have voted for invest in engagement. So what do you mean by that? You obviously created this poll, right?
I did.
So what do you mean by these things first and foremost? And what were you expecting the answer to be?
There really is no right answer. So what I would say is you're a leader, and that's what I wanted you to feel, right? So I want you to look at your answer. And when you decided to invest on engagement, I have a really important question for you. What trade-off did you make when you made that decision? What's the consequence of this decision? So when you decided that as the leader that you were going to invest in engagement, what did you give up in that moment?
Let me ask you this as the poll creator. When you say invest in engagement, what do you specifically mean from all of your experience in the years? What does investing in engagement look like in the real world?
Well, it depends on in your leadership style. So I was allowing you to be your own leader, but if I was to give you a definition on investing in engagement, it'd be working on making sure your staff feels heard.
Interesting. And we've talked a lot about this, Angela, right? You know, so many people come, Meghan, so many people come to us, like in my company, for instance, and they think that we've got all the answers, right? And I'm sure so many people came to you and in your leadership roles throughout the years, Meghan, and be like, listen, I need the answer for this. Right. And I was talking to you the other day, right? And you brought up the fact that, you know, what you realized is the answers didn't matter as much as the questions, right? And I thought that was absolutely, I know you're going to talk about that later in your presentation, but very much so that asking the right questions also increases in the investment on engagement, because I would imagine if people aren't asking people questions, there's no method to engage, right? So that seems like the starting point for it.
And the most important question here is the one you asked yourself before clicking the button. And to me, it's why did you choose this decision? Why did you believe that that was the right move? And what did you trade off? What did you give up as a result of that decision? And that's leadership, right? Oftentimes in leadership, we're stuck in these moments where the sticky situation where there's no great answer and there are consequences to your decisions, and you have to be able to make the best decision in the best moment based on the people in the room that you have. And that is what I'm talking about, judgment. It is not judgment like you are judging someone for something that they've done. It is the ability to discern, to be able to think about your thinking, slow down, and make a decision that you believe is in the best interest of your organization. knowing that there are going to be trade-offs. And to me, human judgment is what makes us so uniquely human in this world of AI. When a lot of answers are coming at us, how the human got to that answer and why they chose to have that answer is the most important way to go. And when answers are becoming automated in our world, I feel like it's so important, this idea that you as humans need to make those decisions in the moment and be able to discern with, it could be AI throwing answers at you. How are you using this information to do what's best for your organization? And so that is something that I noticed significantly across the board and something I wanted to talk about. And
Meghan, real quick, you mentioned the idea of knowing why somebody chose an answer, for instance, right? What is that? Right. You know, I think a lot of people are so quick at answering. Sometimes people are quick at questioning, but actually taking a moment to understand why you answered that way or why you are thinking that way. Is that what you mean when you talk about metacognition? I mean, what does that mean?
100%. It's a part of metacognition, the art of thinking about your thinking. And the beauty of metacognition is there's no there. As you are growing as a human and you're constantly putting yourself in new situations, you may not have all of the answers. And so it's the opportunity for you to sit in that uncomfortable space and decide how you as a human are going to learn and get your way through this. And the funny part about it is when I'm going to go into my slide here, but when you talk about speed, Chris, and you're talking about companies where the end goal is to just get there quick, and we have Q3 coming up or Q2, and we have a goal and we need to get there, or oh my gosh, the CASP assessment is in a month, and I need to cram all of the answers in. This idea to stop and slow down so you can be methodical and move quickly erodes. And to me, when you're talking about human intelligence, this idea of not thinking about thinking, eroding human judgment is the biggest danger as we move forward with AI here that can do a lot of this work. I'm so passionate about making sure that as we can speed through things, think of how many high schoolers are speeding through school.
Yeah.
They're just checking the box, getting the answers. And when they realize that their thought process, their judgment, their human ability to think about thinking is not important, guess what they don't do?
Yeah. They don't pause.
They don't
actually
pause.
do. Yeah.
They don't think. The system, the structure, you can't blame the student. The structure, the system wasn't designed to make their thinking visible.
Interesting. You know, Angela often brings up in our research committee, like the importance of consciousness, right? So the first thing I'm like, listen, we can't use a word like consciousness in public schools, right? They're going to think we're some sort of new age hippies, right? But what she's actually talking about is this pause, right? This idea of kind of asking yourself why, thinking about it for a moment. And you're right, Meghan, the idea that in modern society, it's almost impossible. You are praised for doing things expediently, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily right. That doesn't mean it's actually what you want. So that's a very good point that you drew attention to.
And this is where that gap list that lives, right? So you guys talked about it. What is that one thing about your job that is uniquely human? And you gave such great answers. And that sits on one side over here, these human intelligence, these human skill sets that we know students must be successful. And on the other side, and human judgment, the ability to make and discern and be mindful on decision making. And then you have speed and output. And this gap is here. It exists. And when we only are focused on output, we are diminishing the power of human intelligence and those skills that students so desperately need to be successful in this world. And like I said, it shouldn't be a surprise to any of us that we're seeing people leave the profession or not join the profession. And we're seeing students quietly quit school or go to alternative settings or not do well in school. And these are, if you look at the Harvard study on CEOs, this was so interesting to me. And where your valedictorians of the schools were making less money overall than students who got C's and D's in school.
Wow.
And to me,
shocking.
That gap, what are we missing if students and many of our most famous CEOs today that are running some of the largest companies in the world did terrible in school, Some of them didn't go to college. Some of them almost dropped out.
Most of them dropped out. Let's not
Yes.
some of them dropped.
Some,
Most of them
I
dropped.
know. Most
All
of them.
the people I work with in Silicon Valley that are like these elite people,
Yes.
they did not finish school, but
No.
they're the smartest people I spend time with. And when I asked them, like, you know, would you go back and finish school? And
Yeah.
they're like, it was the box that I was put in that did everything but foster me actually learning. And I was surprised at whether it's Elon or whether it be any of these people that we get to work with in Silicon Valley. It's generally the same answer, Megan. So it's so thankful that you're bringing up that important point right there, because I think it's overlooked, right? Nobody asks them.
And this is where I live. So I wasn't going to say, okay, I'm okay with this gap. I'm not. I'm not okay with students quietly quitting school. I'm not okay with students graduating from any institution not being prepared for their future. And I'm tired of waiting. The education system is a snail pace and it goes so slow. And the bureaucratic layers to be able to get to yes for most decisions are 18 months at minimum. Imagine our world in 18 months from now if we don't take action quickly. Our students deserve better. They deserve more. And this gap is my passion. And so in typical Meghan fashion, I've done all this work. I've lived in this space. I went to the charter world. I was a widow. I unfortunately lost my husband to cancer. And I was in a charter movement and I saw the leadership and I said, you know what? I can do this. I can do this better. I really know I can design a school. And so I quit my job. I mortgaged my home and I started a public charter school. And it wasn't perfect. It was messy. It was hard. And it was something that Laura and I worked for many years on. And I'm so lucky to know Lucy as well, who's joined us in just a few minutes. I'll talk about both of their roles and the importance that they played in this. But I knew I had to design something different. I had seen declining enrollment firsthand. I had seen students that were capable being left behind. I loved the charter movement. I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with the non-classroom based world of charters in California. It is the most amazing space I have ever been in public education. It reinvigorated my love for learning. I didn't believe in personalized learning. I didn't know what it was until I sat in that space. And when I was in it, I knew this was an area in education that I could make positive change.
Let me ask this, Meghan. Like you mentioned charter schools, right? It's public school. But
100%.
I also know from talking to you that it was kind of a contentious thing for you to leave traditional public school and go to the charter school. But you did it for a reason.
Yes,
right? Why is that not celebrated right away? Why was it contentious?
It's because charters are oftentimes considered competition. There's a lot of turf wars that go on in the public ed system for students and seats. So in the charter movement, and I'm so thankful for California to be proponents of the school of choice movement, to have this opportunity. There are many states that believe in school of choice. But when you are a traditionalist, you know, it was against the norm. And as someone who was going up in the system and looking to be a superintendent and seeing parents choose charter schools instead of my school district, it made me ask a lot of questions. And you're going to see really quick how much I love questions. And when I was asking those questions, I decided that if I wanted to sit in a superintendent role and be able to ask my board or answer my board why students would leave my district for a charter school, I better understand what a charter school was. And so I did some oversight for charter schools, but then also went to work for charter schools and then really fell in love with my ability to move the needle and make change quick in the charter movement, which is what I couldn't do in the traditional public space. You were able to turn the ship within a few months in the charter movement, where in a traditional district, you're laughing, Mark, but it takes a long.
No, I'm laughing because it would take many decades to turn the ship in the public space.
And we all know with someone who's like me, I'm an innovator, right? So not every one of my solutions is going to work. And if it doesn't work, I need to get rid of it and try something new. And so I needed to design something different for these students coming to my school. I couldn't just do the same thing. They felt invisible. The teachers felt invisible. And I needed to design a school that allowed for them to be seen. And this was the beginning of IlluminateIXR. And I am so excited to bring to you some of this work and both Anna joined us. I'm so happy you're here, Anna, and Lucy and Laura, who are on this call, and Jeff is a teacher there, so gets to experience it. We're all a part of this work. It was a different way of thinking. So if we started a school where humans were the most important part, whether you were a student or you were a teacher or you were administrator or you were me, you had to be important. You had to be something that mattered. And what we realized is that everyone I hired was grew up in education or a system or a structure that didn't necessarily value that. They didn't know how to focus on these human skills. They were almost scared to try something different. And when you start thinking about the hours of work that we put into EliteX, and I'm going to go into details in a little bit. I'm going to keeping it vague here on purpose because I have some of you may have read the white paper, some of you may have not. Anna and I worked a good year and a half on this to show you all the work. It's not a small bite at the apple, and in typical Meg fashion, this is a very robust research-aligned professional development framework that shows you that when you empower your staff and you empower humans, everything rises. And EliteX was born out of this idea of we didn't know how to do this. We didn't know how, in a system that was always so built on metrics and outcomes, how do you personalize? How do you make this excellent for the people in the room? How do you make a student who doesn't even want to be here feel seen and stay? How do you do that? And people who have read my white paper say, Meghan, this is way too hard. They'll give me all of the reasons why they can't do EliteX, right? I don't have the right environment. I don't have the right board. I don't have the right money. I don't have the right leadership. I don't have the right mindset. And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. EliteX started with a real simple idea. And Laura was there when we were sitting in our cabinet meeting. And I'll never forget, I always have some quirky theme because I'm an elementary teacher, right? Us elementary teachers like themes. The high school teachers in the room would always roll their eyes at me as the leader. But elementary, I always wanted a theme for the year. I wanted to unite staff around a common interest. And so I went into the room and I said, this year, I want to do Question Quest. And I remember them going, what? You want the theme to be Question Quest? And I said, yeah, I really do. I want the theme to be Question Quest. And they're like, why? And then Laura, who is my Chief Academic Innovation Officer, knew exactly why. She brought the Art of Beautiful Questions, a book. We did a book study that year on questions. We spent an entire year asking questions.
All right, I'm pausing right here on this. When you told me about this the other day, I literally was shocked, right? Because in the Silicon Valley landscape, we can tell the difference between if a company's going to be successful by how well they know their customers. And when you said that you spent an entire year figuring out the right questions to ask, I was somewhat taken back, right? And then I'm like, imagine if everyone thought about things this way. Because if you ask the wrong questions, you automatically lose people. But why did it take a year? Why and when did you know that you had enough information and felt comfortable asking the questions, Meghan?
Okay, it's so funny. So I think we annoyed the heck out of people. So we didn't do this perfect. It was a messy process. So we looked at questioning from administration to principal, principal to teacher, teacher to student, student to parent, and parent to everybody. And then we looked at every angle. And the goal of the questioning was to be able to get the person to feel heard. We knew that people felt invisible in the space. And how do you make someone feel valued? Well, you ask them a question. And that's all we did. We started measuring which questions did kids like more and what would I get more out of a student from when I asked a question this way in this moment? How could I get more out of a teacher when I asked a question in this way? And we learned and started seeing patterns and trends. Laura did a great book study on the research behind the art of good questioning. Because when you ask good questions, people have to answer them. And then there's the challenge. I remember and I knew we started changing the culture at Elite when I had a parent complain that I sent too many surveys to her. She called me and said, Meghan, I don't want to answer any more of your surveys. I am so sick and tired of you asking me questions. I've already filled out all of your surveys, and I couldn't disagree with her. We probably were annoying because we were really excited to find answers, but I giggled. I was so proud because guess what? She was complaining about the exact opposite problem that every other parent I heard complained about in my entire public career. You never listen to me. You never listen to what I say. You don't care about me. And I had a parent complaining about me, asking her too many questions, and I cared too much, and she didn't have time for me. And I would take that problem any day over the other. And I knew that this simple art of asking questions changed fundamentally the culture of our school. And this is something that anybody can do. And it's something that can be messy. And then it's also something that has consequences. Because you, as a leader, your staff will start asking you lots and lots and lots of questions. And then I think the Mary Poppins syndrome comes out, right? So I always think that administrators and teachers are supposed to have the magic bag where you pull out all of the tools and somehow can answer every problem that everybody has. And that's just not human. And so as a leader, I learned to say, I don't know that answer. I'm not sure. Or I might answer a question with a question. Well, what do you think about that? And how do you think we should solve that? And I have letter upon letter from teachers at Elite saying that no one's ever asked them their opinion on things. And no one cared about their master's degree or their doctorate degree or their credentialing program in the years they went to school after college to become a teacher. And they didn't really have a say in what or how things were done. And so to me, this question quest became so much more. I just started it as a simple, let's ask questions to see if we can increase engagement of staff, to see if we can make things better. And it became powerful. Laura, do you want to add anything to that? Because I know you were there, you were with me, you helped design it, you were implemented, you created. So I'm bringing you in.
I think the big thing with the questions was just teaching people to stop and listen, to stop making assumptions, to stop seeking out the answer, but to slow down and listen. And that was the whole thrust of the questioning, right? It wasn't just so much of can you ask 50 questions, but can you design meaningful questions that spark conversation and relationship and connection? And then how in tune are you with listening to those responses, not to add on your own piece, but to maybe ask more questions to dig even deeper. So it was a really interesting process.
I think Laura said a key thing there. It's just asking the right questions. And why I bring that up is I was just in a meeting earlier today where in their survey, there was 1,200 questions. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, the signal to noise ratio you're going to get for putting out 1,200 questions in a survey is a problem. But asking the right questions may only take 5, right? If they're the right questions. And that's worth taking 5 years to figure out. You took a year. So I think you're ahead of the curve there. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Megan.
No, it's just Laura was segueing into my next point where questioning only gets you so far. And the art of making your reasoning visible was the next step at Elite, where you had to listen and understand and question. And so it wasn't enough just to ask questions because people go, yeah, or you think about your questions in the morning when you say good morning to somebody, how much do you really want them to respond with all the drama that's going on in their life? Usually you don't. You want them to say, good morning and move on. And how was your day is a quick response answer. That question usually doesn't warrant a long answer. It's usually odd if you get one. And so it was for us, the art of questioning became very much what Laura said about listening and becoming more about why the human felt the way they felt. And we actually did a practice where you had to ask 5 questions without interjecting yourself at all after someone asked a question. It was really uncomfortable for staff. And Laura led that. She's a mastermind at professional development, and she led that with my staff. And that was probably one of the most profound moments where they were looking at, oh my gosh, if I keep digging deeper, I find out more, and how uncomfortable people think silence is. And if you actually pause and wait for the other person to have thought time, like Mark was talking about, processing time, thought time, and let them answer, it's a game changer. So the next layer of the question quest is building in reasoning made visible throughout everything. So we included questions and made sure that students had the opportunity to make their thoughts visible across assignments, one-to-one teacher check-ins. This became a part of my CEO evaluation. My evaluations with every employee across the organization incorporated questions with reasoning. Why do you feel that way? became such an integral part of our community. And it really made sure that we designed systems where human judgment, this idea where you're able to think and you are important and what you bring to the table is your own uniqueness and your history, your skill set is your superpower. And before I, as a leader, can take action, or you as a teacher can take action with an individual student, you must understand the reasoning for your student. You must understand the reason for your teacher's actions. You must be mindful and thoughtful of why you are where you are, how you got there, and what the people in the room that work with you on all of these things feel and think. And, this is where I was at. We started asking better questions, and then the biggest question came. And I'll never forget this. Laura and I were designing PD for February, and we were on this question crust, and one of the teachers asks, well, what is my role? This is back in 2020, if AI is here, because AI was still pretty much in education at that point, way off, right? In education, we were just like super far away. And I had a teacher ask that question, and I posed it to Laura and the rest of my cabinet team. And I had a choice, right? Like in traditional fashion, we could have just like found some great program that told them that they were going to be great and everything's going to be fine. Or I could answer them honestly. And I told her, I'll never forget. I said, I don't know. What do you think the role of a teacher is in the world of AI? And from that question sparked one of the most innovative professional developments that I've seen in education today, where I empowered the teachers along with Anna, who is our coach, Lucy, who is our jump starter on this call. They were consultants with storied experiences and educators from around the world, getting global perspective on what it means to be a teacher in this world of AI. We did not have the answer. I did not pretend they had the answer. I brought a lot of smart people in to Elite to help support the answer. This was a volunteer program. That was 180 hours of professional development in 1 year, weekly coaching that designed a framework. And I was a facilitator, modeling facilitation at its best. I popped in, I popped out. I let the teachers have autonomy to design, to create, to try, to fail, to design, to create, to try, to fail. And what we saw was I had 98% teacher retention. And that wasn't because their job was easy. I asked for them to personalize learning with 300 different curriculums, and every child got their own unique path. It was one of the most challenging jobs that you could have as an educator. But they had opportunity where their voice was heard. They got to ask me questions all the time I never felt threatened, and I was honest in my answers when I didn't know something. It was okay to fail in our school and try again. And I have to tell you, it was all because I made a design decision that in my culture, I was going to require the humans to have a voice and have judgment before I would ever take action. I slowed down, used metacognition, which is a fancy word, for how I want to move forward. How am I going to learn? And I relied so heavily on my staff to make that happen. And it's so important that we continue this work. And Elite is an example of what can happen at one school. And people look at me and go, Meghan, you're nuts. You started this school in your garage. You mortgaged your home to start this school. The school in 4 years, as a result of this work, became a California distinguished school, not because the zip code the students lived in, but because we closed achievement gaps faster than any other school. Did the state ever ask me how I did it? No. They gave me the award. They never once asked me how I did it. And in fact, I was criticized for it because I was a charter school, to be honest with you. People didn't see it as effective. They didn't see it as powerful in this movement. I was honored anyway. It really wasn't about, it wasn't about me, it was about the kids.
Do they honor you, do you think, to kind of keep you quiet? I mean, what is the method there? If they don't care and they're giving you the award for it,
they
why?
care. I think they do. I don't think it's the system's fault. I think it's just it amplifies what they believe, and they believe that the metrics are more important than the messiness. And that's my message today. That the human side in the future workforce and the future world is going to need to have human judgment, and the messiness be made seen and alive for not only humans to be valued, your employees to stay and participate in your mission and vision, but for the betterment of good. And when you focus on the humans and you focus on these skills and you allow for judgment and discernment to be a part of the culture, those metrics that state so loved. Now, Laura will tell you, and this year I'm so proud, I did leave my tenure in June. So with you, Mark, I think you left at the end of last year. So you and I probably have similar paths there. But, we did have our state assessments results come in, and over half of our students are in the poverty line, and 73.3% in ELA and math of those students that are impoverished and low socioeconomic status made a year or more gain under our tenure.
That's unheard of.
That is definitely unheard of.
And that is a result of this culture. It is a result of, and I think Anna and Lucy, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the students, the teachers, what you're seeing. Jeff, you're a teacher at Elite. He's an amazing innovator. That idea of creation, Jeff is diving into VR with Elite, is a part of our SOAR program for advanced students, to making sure that entrepreneurship is being focused on at the school. Laura continues to be the Chief Academic Innovation Officer. I miss her every day. But I'm so honored that she's keeping the torch and the light on. And Anna and Lucy are continuing to coach for the EliteX mission that is happening this year. But I'd love for you guys to add a little bit about your perspective of EliteX, because it really wasn't me. My decision was to make space for the amazing people in the room to do something better than I've ever seen done before.
And I definitely want to hear from them as well, because every single time I ask you about this, right? Like, how did you pull this off? You're always throwing the credit to this team of people. And so right away, I'm already fans of anyone in the room that works with Meghan. But I want you to know sincerely, when I'm sitting here trying to give her the position to hype herself up, she immediately throws it to all of you, which I really, really appreciate. That's why she's a dynamic leader. So anyone that wants to share on what Meghan just drew attention to, I'd love to hear it.
I can go ahead if you like. Meghan created a path for educators and students to do what has been needed to be done that not many people dare to do, which was to blow down the walls of a system that limits human intelligence and human thriving and hope and meaning and a lot of things that we would hope education existed for, and that has come to exist for other reasons, for teacher efficiency, for numbers, for funding, and all kinds of things. So when Meghan said, I want students to walk out of here knowing how to thrive in the world as it looks today, and it didn't look like it does today when we started, but that's the point. The world will never be the same year after year after year. Therefore, why should education be the same year after year after year? So how do we redesign the system so that learners become lifelong learners and use an education system to learn who they are and how they're going to thrive while they're alive on this planet? That is the big goal, and that's what we designed backwards to achieve. And that's why we have very happy teachers and students who are engaging cognitively by commitment over compliance in the learning journey. So Meghan's idea was the foundation for all of this to happen. And she's brilliant, so she needs to talk herself up.
You know what? I just made space for this team to focus on those human skills first and the standards second. I didn't really care about proficiency. If you have a kid who's coming to your school that's so disenfranchised with the system, so shut down, told so many times that they can't, I just want, I couldn't do it anymore. I still had to comply. It was really risky because as a charter doing this, if we didn't improve our test scores, I would risk reauthorization. So I did this in such risk. It was scary. There's so much pressure. And I wasn't guaranteed in this moment for it to be successful. I couldn't have told you that by doing Elite X that all of these things would happen.
So
I
you
just
rolled the
believe
dice, right?
I did.
Knowing that if you failed,
Yes.
it could have
My
revoked your
job,
charter.
my job,
Yeah.
my charter, all the people that I cared for. Yeah.
That's so ballsy. And I want to thank you on behalf of humanity for doing that, right? Because I don't think a lot of people have I want to use the word courage here. I don't think a lot of people have the courage to do something like that. And there's a big difference between courage and bravery. This is a courage example, for sure.
Well, and I still had all the compliance. So a lot of people think that Elite is a charter's different, somehow private. It's not. A charter is a public school. Students are able to attend for free. I have to comply with all the transparency laws, all of the audits. We have 0 audit exceptions through my tenure. We were creative. We were innovative. We did things differently, and we got better results than I've seen. And a lot of this foundational work in the non-classroom based world, I have to give credit to this portion, this enclave of the world where personalized learning is the norm. But we took personalized learning and decided to add human intelligence on top of it. So we already know that when you individualize education and when you have IEPs, for example, students are more likely to have goals and objectives. Now, take that concept to the general education population where you're tailor making school for every student based on their likes and interests. That's what we do while complying with the state, while complying with standards, while taking state assessments, while making sure we're transparent and every dollar is accounted for. And on top of that, it wasn't enough because the students needed to see that these skills that they had, I saw the writing on the wall. I listened to the podcasts. I knew the business owners, and I started making really great friends with businesses. And this is where Colin comes into my future world. I made friends with a lot of people from around the world. And the problem was they couldn't find a job force where students were able to critically think, problem solve, or be good stewards in the job. They were really great at compliance. They could easily be micromanaged. That wasn't the problem. But nobody wants to micromanage you. You don't have time for that. And students were not able to critically think unless someone told them exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it, because they live in a world in school that's so structured for them. It's why you see attrition so much in year 1 of college.
So that's like the antithesis of critical thinking, what you're saying, right? Yes. So in the interest of basically inspiring people to critically think, they give the framework of the antithesis of critical thinking to get there, right? Yes. That's shocking to me. And I'm so thankful that you were willing to have enough courage to actually take a stand here. And the numbers speak for themselves, right? So, I mean, that's just the reality of it. And I know we're getting close to the end here, Meghan, but
I want to honor time. But if you take one thing away, Elite X was an experiment at Elite. The reason I left Elite was because I knew this was bigger than one system in one school. The experience that I had at Elite led me to believe that I, as an ed tech provider, I'm on a mission to be able to scale the idea of human intelligence and be able to see and make visible the gap in education that is so hard and so hard to fill. I'm honored to serve. And if you take one thing away from me, ask a question in your next meeting and see how your culture responds. And if they're open and they actually answer you honestly, I challenge you to start your own question quest. Because in your company, that simple act of having humans being able to question everything in your organization, and some of it's going to be challenging and noisy. I promise you, you will see that the future of your organization will belong to people who protected that judgment. And I believe every organization in the future that will be successful will be ones that slow down, protect human judgment, because with AI here, it's so much easier not to.
I got to tell you, now I understand, again, reiterating that you're one of my favorite people on the planet. You know, the question quest, it seems to be very popular amongst the chat here. I never thought about this, right? And this advice transcends education, super important in education, but even in the day-to-day business world I work in, you know, for anybody that's out there, they're deciding to build a new ed tech platform. That was why I got involved in the human intelligence movement. So many of the new fangled technology, it was clear to me in Silicon Valley they'd never asked a teacher a single question. They'd never taught a classroom lesson, but yet they won an award for having the best ed tech company of 2025, right? It's shocking to me. And realize in our accelerator, we've launched amazing things like Udemy, which just merged with Coursera to be the largest online education platform. But you see the difference between people that are successful in changing the way we think as humans are predicated by those that ask the most questions, right? And it's not, so many people frame their questions as like, listen, I'm going to design a question to get the answer that I want. I have a feeling that that was the opposite of what you did there. Let's design a question to actually get the answers that are probably unexpected, right? So with that, again, on behalf of humanity, I thank you for this, Meghan, because if that's one thing we can do across all districts in the country, whether it's college, whether it's down, is actually ask the people that are involved in this daily the question. I saw somebody in the chat mentioned earlier that they removed teacher from the vernacular, right? And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, wow, here's a teacher type person saying teacher's not the right word to use. But at the end of the day, that's probably the result of some question by asking a teacher, what do you feel that your job is? And those teachers say to teach, that's one thing. But those teachers that say to help students learn, that's an entirely different human, right? So I really appreciate everything that you've added to this conversation, but more importantly, the impact you make in society. And I'm so thankful that you've decided to take what you learned at EliteX and put it into some, we'll call it a startup. I only put that phrase on there, right? Because I wish it was 10 steps further than it is, but as a startup, it's doing an amazing thing to actually figure out how we can scale this. And one thing I want everyone to know, when I sat with Meghan, right, one of the things she showed me with their startup was like, listen, we got this VR headset, we've got VR classes, so on and so forth. And I'm like, how do you imagine that's going to happen into a school in South Central Los Angeles, right? Or Ponchatoula will be some rural community where they never experienced this. And your answers to everything was like, listen, not only are there funds available out there to close the gap technologically, but when we're actually able to show that what we do with the technology actually matters, it opens the door for so many other schools to understand what they can do with their budgets to most effectively impact the lives of the students. So for that, I'm very thankful, Meghan. I think that you're literally a special human for that matter. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share with all of us tonight. I have an inkling that many people are going to want to engage with this video. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to all my team members who showed up. Angela, so nice to meet you. Mark, so nice to meet you as well. Thank you, everybody. And, Angela, I look forward to reading your work. Thank you for all the comments in the chat. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you aren't already connected, and would love to talk to you more if this speaks to you and how I can support you in general across how you can bring human intelligence and protect human judgment in this high pressure world we're living in education.
And outside of Google, how do people find more information about what you're doing? I mean, do they visit Elite's website? Do they visit your Illuminate brand?
They can visit me on LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, you'll see my personal website, which is MeghanKFreeman.com. And then otherwise, you can visit me at IlluminateIXR.com, which is my current company.
Thank you so much. And again, I want to give a special thanks to Meghan here. Of course, anyone that has attended, I'll be honest, I've been a part of many of these events. I've never seen a chat stream so filled with information as this one tonight, right? So obviously you're resonating with so many people, Meghan. And for that, yes, you're awesome, but it's the actual subject matter you're discussing about that really people generally resonate with. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher, it doesn't matter if you're an administrator, it doesn't matter if you're a parent, a student. It makes sense for everyone. So please visit Meghan's websites. And for those of you that aren't part of the Human Intelligence Movement, please visit humanintelligencemovement.org. We have a very simple join on there. We'll invite you to our LinkedIn group. We've got cool people like everyone on the call here. Mark, who's absolutely awesome. So please visit, join that. And we look forward to this next opportunity to discuss evolving minds with people that are brilliant like Meghan Freeman. So thank you all for attending tonight. And I bid you all a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Meghan. You were awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.